In Japan, for many years, there's been a term black company to describe certain businesses. In the past, it applied to companies linked to organized crime or other antisocial causes, but in recent years, the definition has changed. Japan has always had companies that used workers for little or no pay, engaged in excessive power harassment, maintained oppressive work environments, and otherwise exploited workers at low cost. The current term black company refers to companies like this, and unfortunately, such companies are still in existence. In this video, we'll delve into a dark side of Japanese society, the problems of black companies. On this channel, we'll cover some of the lesser-known topics of Japanese culture. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe. It's a term that isn't widely known outside of Japan. Black companies. What are they? In Japan, there is no clear definition of what a black company is, but it's used by many to describe companies that exploit their workers through illegal or oppressive labor policies. In English, there is the similar term sweatshop, but Japanese black companies can be of any industry or type of work. So let's look at the characteristics of what are widely called black companies. First of all, the main aspect is that they force employees to work excessively long hours. Under Japanese law, a day of labor is defined as 8 hours, which means that workers cannot be forced to work beyond 40 hours per week. However, in cases where extra hours of work are needed outside normal hours or on days off, it's limited to 45 hours per month, or a total of 360 hours per year. Yet surprisingly, until 2019, there was no penalty for violating these laws. This allowed employers to legally exploit workers' hours. This was one of several factors that led to the birth of black companies. With the issue of black companies becoming a problem in recent years, the government has been revising labor laws, but they still favor the businesses. There are exceptions that allow companies to exceed the legal limits for so-called unavoidable circumstances. Black companies, which have always depended on the long hours of work by their laborers, are slow to adapt to the changing regulations. A second aspect of black companies is that, astonishingly, they often pay no wages to their overworked employees. The way the companies get around it is this. They assign workers impossible sales quotas or excessive workloads. When the worker is unable to fulfill the work by the deadline, the responsibility is placed on the worker, who is then forced to perform unpaid overtime. It's common for the worker to feel guilt from failing at the task or quota and thus comply with the demand. Also, Japanese companies have strong hierarchies based on age and job position, and those lower on the ladder must submit to their higher-ups. So a somewhat crazy custom in traditional companies is that a younger employee may not go home until his superiors have finished their work, or he must get to the office before his superiors even if there's no work to do. Practices like this have led to companies being able to get unpaid labor from their employees. There are even cases where employees who make mistaken purchases or damage company equipment are forced to compensate out of their own pockets, even when done as part of their work. Other illegal practices include not paying the salaries agreed upon before hiring an employee. The third characteristic of black companies is the atmosphere where harassment is allowed. In Japanese black companies, there is a practice of superiors harassing their underlings, who are then blamed for their situations because of it. In companies like this, it's a common thing for employees who underperform to face intense public criticism in violation of their rights or public ridicule in front of their peers. Or managers of poorly run projects push their responsibility onto their subordinates and reprimand them as a way of dealing with their own stress. They will evade the responsibility that higher-ranking employees and the company have for employees under them while only pushing their own responsibilities down to their subordinates. This type of harassment can harm the employee's psychological and physical health. So what allows these black companies to thrive in Japan? While it would seem that work environments are determined solely by the companies, the number of black companies in Japan indicates that the roots go deeper to social and cultural factors in Japan. One cause is the peculiar hiring system used in Japan. In Japan, there is a strong tendency to hire employees as generalists rather than specialists. Japanese students learn specific skills in school, but only a few go on to work as specialists in those areas. In most Japanese companies, new employees are hired from the pool of college graduates just once a year. But while prospective employees may find their career objectives given some consideration, they will have no choice in the type of job they get or where they will work once joining the company. Those are determined strictly by the company. And though attitudes are changing, the standard in Japan is still lifetime employment at a single company until retirement. During their careers, employees will not specialize in one job, but be rotated to gain experience in various types of work. For example, an employee who is performing well in an on-site manufacturing position might end up being reassigned the next day to desk work. Making people work like this won't help the worker in gaining expertise, but the company will claim that it's providing an important position for the employee, in reality for the company's benefit. This problem of molding the employee's career ends up creating great numbers of corporate generalists who can only work within the confines of one company. The employees may wish to switch jobs, but find that they lack special skills and give up, resigning themselves to their fate. And as stated previously, lifetime employment has been the historic standard in Japan, so switching jobs is seen as going off the rails of social acceptance. It ends up with the workers being dissatisfied with their positions in the company, but unable to work elsewhere, stuck in an unrewarding employment environment. Another major factor is the sense of responsibility that many Japanese hold. Japanese people are considered to be serious with a sense of commitment to their work. But this sense of responsibility can sometimes be too strong. Often people will think that quitting a company will impose on their colleagues, or that to leave a company is to run away from one's work and is a shameful thing. Black companies are good at taking advantage of this attitude and will tell anyone who wishes to leave that they don't have what it takes to make it in any other company, thus raising their anxiety and uncertainty. Such peculiarities of Japanese society and Japanese people's sense of responsibility are the factors that give birth to these black companies. The problems of black companies were subtly acknowledged but tolerated until the 1990s. Japan as a country underwent rapid economic development after World War II and experienced the economic bubble in the 1980s. This experience of great success led to an attitude that hard work by employees was essential for economic growth and companies' success. And during economic good times, employees went along with that, because under economic growth and a good economy, a worker's own treatment also improved. In the late 1980s, there was even a commercial for an energy drink with the tagline, "Are you fighting 24 hours a day?" This exemplifies the idea that all of Japanese society viewed working hard, even too hard, as a good thing. But as the Japanese economy stagnated in the 1990s, many, especially younger workers, started to doubt such ideas. This accelerated going into the 2000s. The advance of information technology brought an era of huge benefits from shorter periods of work, but in Japan, the old-fashioned attitudes toward hard work were difficult to escape. It was around this time, on Japan's largest internet community site, 2channel, that young Japanese started to share information on all the things that were wrong with their employers. This was when the truth of exploitative companies, the black companies, came to be properly seen as a problem. In the years following, the media started reporting stories of people who had suffered in their health or even lost their lives through the harassment they had received in black companies, and the issue became recognized as a problem. In 2009, there were 63 people who lost their lives through illness or suicide as a result of long work hours, and of those, 29 had been forced to work over 100 hours of overtime in 1 month. Meanwhile, mental illness as a result of long hours or pressure from superiors was being called Japan's modern sickness. Eventually, the Japanese government reluctantly faced the issue and defined 80 hours of overtime per work as the karoshi line, the line of death from overwork, and drew plans to improve the work environment of the population. In addition, in September 2013, the Japanese Ministry of Labor investigated some 4,000 companies which showed excessive employee turnover or suspected labor law violations, resulting in the publication of the names and violations by those companies which were seen as the most culpable and unable to improve. However, eliminating these exploitative companies was no easy task. In 2015, there was a tragic case where a 24-year-old female employee at the major advertising firm Dentsu, after dealing with 100 hours of overtime per month and harassment from her superiors, ended her own life. The problems of excessive workloads at major companies was something that people in Japan were aware of, but it had finally been acknowledged by the nation itself, leading the government to take steps to deal with it. This led the way to historic reforms in labor standards and legal penalties against offenders. In addition, society's attitudes towards these black companies became more critical. In 2012, a volunteer group established the Black Company Counterplan Project to publicize the need for improvements in working standards. Every year, the organization announces a Black Company Award to publicize the companies with the worst work environments while calling on them to improve. Nonetheless, as previously mentioned, these rules still pay consideration to the companies, so it's hard to say that they fully protect employees from their oppressive workplaces. There are even voices that things have gotten worse. As a result of mandated upper limits on work hours, companies will force employees to illegally work off the clock for free. And the crazy thing is, often it is employees themselves who request to perform this unpaid work. In recent years, the target has expanded beyond full-time jobs. A new concern is exploitative part-time jobs, where excessive labor is forced on part-time workers, such as students who lack the social literacy to question their treatment. There's still a long way to go for improvements in Japan's labor environment. What's your opinion on the problem? On this channel, we'll cover some of the lesser-known topics of Japanese culture. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe. We'll see you again next time.